Hey, y'all, thanks for tuning into season 3, episode 24 of the Peace Podcast. Just let me release the pain of the past, whatever that looks like. And so I have talked to you on several occasions about the things that have happened in my romantic relationships in the past. And I think that it's worth just reiterating that in those spaces, the type of behaviors that happened to me, and this is not me taking accountability away from myself because I chose the relationships. I went into those relationships knowing that they were not going to work for me before I ever got months and years into those relationships, and I stayed. But the things that happened to me inside of those relationships were not okay. The way that those people treated me were not okay. Being cheated on is not okay. Being treated as if you're less than, being belittled and berated, and all of those things are not okay. However, in order to get to a place of healing, in order to get to a place of being able to truly and confidently love myself and grow and heal and change things about me, I had to accept that yes, those things did happen. No, they weren't okay, but also find a place of forgiveness. And I think that forgiveness is such a conflicting detail in our stories because we tend to think that if we forgive somebody for what they've done to us, that it in turn absolves them of any form of accountability of what they've done, especially if you really just want an apology. And I know that feeling because when you're in relationship with people and you think that that person is going to be your spouse, that they've promised you this future, and you believe the words that they've said, and they brought this representative in the beginning of the relationship, and you believed that representative to be actually who they were, and then all of the sudden they shift back into who they truly are, and the future that you had planned with them is not only annihilated, but you realize that it was never an actual reality in the first place. It's hard to be like, listen, I wasted 7 years of my life on this person, on this relationship, on what I thought the future was going to hold. And now that thing isn't going to happen. And it's primarily because of this other person's behaviors. And for that person to go through the course of the relationship, do all of these horrible things to you, and then move on past the relationship once it's over, while you're sitting in the puddle of pain and mess that was created as a result of it, the last thing on your mind is forgiving them for what they've done. But in order to truly understand how to free yourself from the pain from the past, you have to internalize that forgiveness is a part of that process. And it's not telling yourself or anyone else that it's okay that that person did the thing that they did. But it is saying, I am no longer willing to carry the weight of this thing, of needing an apology, of the pain that it caused, of the unworthiness that I feel as a result of it. I'm no longer willing to carry the pain of that thing with me. And I equate it to, when I give my children grace. Now, there are some times where I'm playing with my 8-year-old and he might think that we're wrestling and he forgets his own strength and he hurts me. Now, I know he's not doing that intentionally. I know that it's an accident. But I can say, I forgive him for doing that because I know that it wasn't intentional and I know that he didn't do it on purpose. And it's easy to do that because he's probably going to apologize because he doesn't want to hurt me. The part where it becomes a little bit more difficult when you're doing that equation is when you have to say, well, this person did do this intentionally. They did mean to hurt me. They did mean to do all of the things they did. And so how do I say, I understand why they did those things, even though I was the casualty in this situation, and I forgive them for what they've done. And I think that what we have to train our brains to do is to say that we're not necessarily saying, I forgive them for all of the behaviors that they did, because those behaviors had an impact and they carried weight. But it's to say in your brain, there are times where I've done things that I'm not necessarily proud of. There are times where I have, even if it was subconsciously, it still might have been intentionally, hurt someone because I didn't want to feel the pain that I was feeling. But yet I'm hoping that people can forgive me, and I'm hoping that people can give me grace. I'm hoping that God has given me grace for all of the mistakes that I've made. And if I'm hoping for that amount of grace for myself, then I have to also give that amount of grace to other people. And it's not to say that now I'm going to be their best friend and now I'm going to be in a relationship with them again, or that I would ever even consider having them close to me or in my circle. But what I can say is that whatever they're experiencing, whatever pain or hurt or deceit or past struggles that they've experienced, brought them to a place where they felt like they needed to do that to me inside of our relationship. And I have grace for the person who was put in a position where they feel like they needed to hurt other people in order to be able to navigate the world. And though I don't necessarily think that it's okay to hurt people because you're hurt, I do know that people do that because they don't know what else to do. They don't know how to process their emotions. They don't know how to experience their emotions without hurting other people. And so I'm going to give that person grace because they weren't parented well, because they weren't loved well, because they weren't nurtured well. And I hate that for them, even though I was a byproduct of the symptoms of those things. But what it does for me is it frees up that mental space where the grudge exists, where the resentment exists, where I'm constantly wanting that person to be hurt because they hurt me. Because when you're carrying around that weight, it is still heavy, even if you don't mean to be carrying it, even if you don't consider that you're carrying it, even if you don't acknowledge that you're carrying it, you're still carrying it, because everything that they do from that point forward, every thought that you have about the past and that experience is going to have the filter of the amounts of resentment and hate and frustration that you feel toward that person, instead of understanding where they may have been coming from. Now, does that mean that they're going to give you that same forgiveness back? No, it doesn't. They may still be out here smearing your name, telling the worst stories about you. And trust me, mine is. He absolutely is out there sharing the worst stories about me, sharing them to my child even. But I know that in order for my kid to be healthy and in order for me to be healthy, I have to know the true meaning of forgiveness. And my forgiving him for what he did to me is more about my own inner peace than it is about him. It took a very long time to get to a place where I would pray for his heart to heal, where I would pray for God to get a hold of him and just love on him and help him to see the error of his ways. But I also know that if that happens, then my child is going to be a beneficiary of that thing. I also know that if that happens, that he's going to walk in the world in a more freed place. And I don't want him to live in the evilness and the ugliness of his past. I want him, just like everyone who listens to this pod, to experience what freedom from the bondage that it is holding on to you feels like. And so because I want that for him, I have to forgive the version of him who did what he did to me. Does that mean that I believe that he's changed? No, I don't. I think that he has those things still deeply rooted in him because of the continuance of his behaviors toward me even to this day, because of the need to control and not help financially be responsible for his child and all of the things that he does to try to mentally manipulate him. But at the end of the day, I know that his reasoning for doing that isn't always out of hatred, but a lot of it is out of his need to feel like he's in control of the situation, because he's always needed to feel like he was in control of the situation because of the past that he's had to experience. When I hold on to that grudge, and I held on to that grudge for, several years, but when I hold on to that grudge, I feel sick. I feel like a different version of me. I feel a heavier weight of constantly just having the anger that he has created inside of me, and that's not really who I am. And then I don't have the patience for other people around me because I'm, living with this internal anger. And so I know that the emotional weight of holding on to unforgiveness and putting grudges in the spaces where there should be forgiveness really makes my mental health and my physical health worse. And it gives him the control to continue to not only manipulate me and cause me pain, but to have access to my full attention on his behaviors when he's no longer even present in my physical space anymore. And then the other thing is that when I let go of it, when I said, okay, I'm going to forgive what happened to me. I'm still going to hold him accountable for the behaviors that he continues, but I'm going to forgive what happened to me. Then it allowed me to move forward and be in a healthier space, not just alone, but in relationship. Because what happens when you get into new relationship after you've been in those toxic relationships is that you hold that other person accountable for being just like the past person was. So you'll start to notice the things that they're doing and you'll attach those behaviors to the current person, even though those aren't his intentions or her intentions, even though that isn't the way that she's moving or he's moving in life, you'll start to attach those things to that person because of the resentment they're still holding on to. It's looking for a place to land accountability, and you're landing it with the person in your life right now who's doing none of those things. And there are several people in your space that are going to do the most evil things that you could never reason within your brain and in your being how they could do such a thing to a person. And I have been there and I understand. We're talking slashing tires. We're talking taking a car and leaving me carless. We're talking, financially just taking everything. And I get it. It is not a happy space to be in. You don't experience joy in that space. But that person will perpetually have control over your emotional state if you don't learn how to forgive the things that were done to you. I'm no longer going to show up to the pick up and drop off with a smug look on my face or a feeling of anger inside of me, because I have compassion for where he behaved from, and I still do even when he does the ugliest things to me. I won't give him access to be able to do them. I'm going to be on high alert to determine that he's doing them, but the level of forgiveness that I feel is that even if he did those things daily like he did in the past in our relationship, I have control over giving him access to me. But even more so than that, I have control over him having access to my emotions. So that thing that you're holding on to right now, that thing that you're unwilling to let go of because you have so much contempt toward the person, you're holding so much resentment in your heart toward the person. Imagine what would happen and what spaces you would free up in your life if you said, this is who that person is. And I forgive the things that were done to me, but I'm also going to resolve that that is who this person is. I have control over the level of access they have to me. I have control over the boundaries that I've created with them, but I am no longer going to allow the things that they did to me to have space to rest inside of me as grudges and resentment and emotional weight, because I know that that thing is going to make me sick. You don't have to call the person and say, I forgive you for everything that you've done, and have this long drawn out conversation with that person. And sometimes I think that we misconstrue the part of forgiveness that says it's a you thing. It's something that you're doing inside of you. You're saying, this thing happened to me. This experience happened to me, but I believe that God is working things out for the greater good of those who love him, and I love him, and I'm going to let him work this thing out. But I'm also going to let go of the negative emotions that it's causing in me, the negative feelings that it's causing in me, the amount of attention and space that I'm allowing it to occupy in me, because I want peace more than I want that person to pay for what they've done. Because the reality is, our God is a just God. So that person may not pay in the way that you hope that they will, but eventually there are going to be consequences to behaviors. There are actions and reactions, and those things don't have to be your reactions. They can be just the natural state and chain of events that happen as a result of being that person and being that way. And you don't have to be the one who is orchestrating the aftermath of this thing, because what's happening is the chaos is resting inside of you, and that person is moving on and going on about their life to make someone else their victim. And if you allow them to continue to live rent-free in your head and continue to think about all the things they did to you and how you hope that they have to pay, or maybe even you're developing plans to make them pay, what you're doing is creating the chaos inside of you that allows their presence to still be there, even though you've physically removed them from your life. And you deserve better, and you are worthy of more than continuing that perpetual cycle that you've already lived through, that you already got yourself out of. You are worth being able to move on, to move beyond the space that you've been in for however long that person existed in your life. And you are worth being able to say, God, I want to forgive what was done to me. I want to forgive the person who did this thing to me. But I'm having a hard time releasing it because I don't want them to feel like they don't have to be accountable for their actions. That battle is not yours to fight. A just God will fight it for you, and the job that you have is to say, I'm going to let it go because I want my peace more than I want this person to pay for what they've done. I desire to move forward, and I know that I cannot do that with the past chained to my ankle. And I don't want any longer for my brain space, my mental space, to be weighed down with the grudges and the resentment that I feel for this person. And I want you to know that it's not easy. It's not easy to not feel that feeling toward that person every single day. It's not easy to say, I'm no longer going to think about them or hold space in my brain for them to occupy. But eventually, small, tiny shifts every single day when they pop up in your brain, you say, you know what? They did do that to me. And that's really frustrating, but I'm healing, and I hope that healing comes for them too. You know what? They did do that to me, and I forgive that they've done that to me, and I'm no longer going to hold a grudge toward them for the things they've done. You know, I've had friendships end. I've had family relationships end, and I don't wish any ill will on those people because I forgive them for what they've done, but I also know that there's no longer space for them to have access to me, and that feels freeing for me to not have to open up the gates for me to be hurt again, but also to know that I wish them well regardless of what they've done in my past. So I hope that for you today, I hope that you're able to really look into the places where you need to forgive you and you need to forgive other people. And I hope that this message allows you to propel forward and move forward beyond the resentment that you're holding. If this message resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Follow me on all socials. Share this with someone that you know might need it, because you never know when one sentence, one video, one short is going to be the catalyst for change that they need to break free from the bondage that they're experiencing. I appreciate all of you for tuning in, and I'll see you again next time.